Hey friends, welcome to Chaplain's Time. Give everybody a second to get here. I am going to try to light this candle. It may or may not work. It's not going to work. But there is a candle here, so know that we're lighting it in spirit. We are visiting with some family this weekend, so if you hear them in the background, that's why, but I'm eager to be here with you for Chaplain's Time in this third Sunday of Lent. And I want to start by telling you a story from years ago. This is from when I was serving at a parish in North Carolina. It was my first priest job after I got out of seminary. And a good friend of mine had lost her grandmother. And her grandmother was really important in her life. And it was one of those moments where I was really sad that I couldn't be with her at the funeral, but like practically it just didn't make sense for me to travel from North Carolina up to be with her at the funeral. And so I decided instead that I would sit in the church where I was serving during the time that the funeral was happening, and that I would just pray during that time, and I would think about her. And she had written the eulogy for her grandmother, and I asked her to send me the eulogy so that I could read it while I was sitting in the space. And I just decided that I was going to be spiritually present at the funeral, even though I couldn't be present in person, which is actually a practice that I have used many times since then, because sometimes you just can't be with people in person for important events. But there is something about like, I'm going to set aside this time and space to be with you in spirit. So this was the first time I ever tried to do that. So I was sitting in the church and I was praying for my friend. I was thinking about her grandmother, and my phone rang. And I looked down and it was my sister. And I thought, I shouldn't answer this because spiritually I'm at a funeral right now. Sorry, it's loud out there. So I shouldn't answer this because I'm at a funeral. But then I was like, oh, I'll just pick up and say hi and explain. You know, I always love talking to my sister. And so I picked up the phone and I said hello. And I immediately told her what I was doing. Like, listen, I'm sitting in the church. I'm spiritually attending this funeral. And she said, oh, that's really sweet. I'm just driving from school into Providence for something. She went to school in Connecticut. And I said, oh, and she said, where is the funeral? And I told her where the funeral was. And she said, I'm driving by there right now. And I said, no kidding. And she said, I'm 20 minutes early for what I need to do in Providence. And we both just paused for a second, and she said, I'm wearing jeans. And I said, I don't think it matters. And she pulled right into the parking lot of the church, and she jumped out of the car, and she went inside. And it was like the reading right before my friend got up to say her eulogy. And my sister was able to stand in the back of the church or sit in the back of the church and listen to my friend give the eulogy for her grandmother. And then a few minutes later, she snuck out the door and went back to her car and drove to Providence. And this has just always been like one of my favorite stories of this moment that for me was really just a glimpse of God at work. And sometimes it's like I tell a story like that and I don't know, is it kind of woo-woo? Like, should I be saying like, look at how I experienced God in this way? And a lot of people would say like, well, it's just a coincidence. It's not a real, not a real thing. But I will tell you that in my life, like over and over and over again, I have had these moments that are so special and have changed the way I look at the world, and have changed the way I love other people and the way that I love God. And so this was no exception. And it has just been like one of my favorite memories and stories to tell. So I was thinking about that story because one of the readings that we had at church this morning, if you were there, was a story from Exodus where Moses encounters the burning bush. And he's trying to figure out what to do and how to lead the Israelites to freedom. And God speaks to him from this bush, like has a fire in the center of it, right? And like Moses hears a voice and God says, like, this is what you should do. And Moses says, this is crazy. God's voice continues to come to him. And that is the moment in our scripture that really kind of prompts Moses to take the next action and to help lead the Hebrew people to freedom in the promised land. Long journey, but we don't need to get into that right now. It's, how they were able to leave their enslavement. And I just started to think, What would have happened if Moses had decided not to tell anybody that story? You know, what if Moses had said, you know what? I swear I just experienced that, but it's crazy town and nobody's going to believe this. And I can't walk down this mountain and tell people that God spoke to me out of a burning bush. And not for nothing, but Moses could have pretty easily made that decision. Moses could have decided not to tell this story. And that moment on the mountain could have been between Moses and God and might not have led to divine action and to the story that we still tell and remember today. And so I found myself just feeling really grateful that Moses had the courage to share that story, and thinking about how easy it is for us to dismiss those divine moments that we encounter as just a coincidence or too woo-woo to share with anybody, or nobody's gonna like believe that or think about that. But you know, like, I still think it is how we have these like special moments and experiences with God and with one another, right? And I think it's okay to define our experience with the divine in whatever way we need to, that helps us to have that connection, right? And to feel that presence in our lives. And so I know from my own experience in life, like, if I go looking for evidence of something, I'll find it. Most of the time that works against me, right? Like, I'll decide that somebody is mad at me, and then I will spend all this time finding evidence that the person is actually mad at me, when in fact, all that has happened is that I have decided something that is not necessarily true. But I believe that if we are looking for evidence of God's love, and in this case, I think God's love is actually real, not some made up construct in my mind. But if we are looking for evidence of the divine and for evidence of God and for evidence of those transcendent moments that help us to have a clearer sense of what God is calling us to do, I think we will find those moments. And I think those are moments that change us and that change our communities and that ultimately have the potential to change the arc of our stories and our lives of faith as individuals and as community. So, you know, we're in Lent, third week of Lent. Lots of people take on a Lenten discipline. Lots of people feel like, no way, I don't want anything to do with a Lenten discipline. That sounds horrible. For years, I've given things up for Lent, but the last couple of years, we've just given up a lot, period. And so giving up something extra for Lent has not been a spiritual practice that I've been interested in taking on. But dare I suggest, this third Sunday of Lent, if you are looking for a Lenten discipline this week, consider the Lenten discipline of looking for evidence of God and looking for evidence of the divine, because I truly believe that you will find it. So I hope that you will look for that, believe in that, and be courageous enough to share your stories, because they are beautiful stories and beautiful examples for all of us of the way we experience God's tremendous and abundant love. Take care, everybody. Be well.